Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I thought I would do a casual video talking about accruing books or accumulating them. My whoops, we almost had a huge pile of books collapse over here. My story was that over the years I was not much of a strong reader. I did occasionally get books and try to get some knowledge out of books. I was much less of a fiction reader than nonfiction. But even so, my areas of study, if you will, were very narrow. So I find that as far as historical inquiry, particularly, I can't do very well with a book that is not written to my liking. I'm learning more now that I, with 2 years solid practice behind me, I am learning now how to read things that are poorly constructed or just not so smoothly written as I would like. So I'm making improvements, but over the years I was very limited in what sort of thing I could pick up, and of course also limited simply by, simply by what piqued my interests. And what this is ultimately leading to is to show you my collection of books dealing with China. I have a cat right there who is going to jump down in a minute. Yes, he jumped down. So it seems like a madhouse when I film out here, and so it is, but I will just try to go with it. Now, I've made some videos showcasing books that I have picked up in Evanston. When I have an appointment up there, I go to a bookstore, Amaranth Books, which I used to frequent when I was a young man. And I like to support the shop owner. I expect at some point, not too distantly, he will be retiring from the business, and at that point the shop is likely to close. He has a very well curated selection. I've always admired the books that you get in his shop, and everything is in nice condition. So as an example, any kind of New York Review of Books edition that you are going to find there will be marked at $4. And he will often have Library of America editions, usually something like $10 a piece. You can get those cheaper online sometimes. It really depends on the volume. So I think I showed this last time I was there. Because the flow of his inventory is not so fast, I can notice something one time and then be thinking about it, and then when I go back, if I'm in luck, still find it and pick it up. And this tripartite novel by Dos Passos was a very important thing when I was young. You would hear about it, people talked about it, and when I say talked about it, I mean you would see mention of it in say, something you were reading about Ernest Hemingway. They would mention, well, Dos Passos, blah, blah, blah. I did not come from circles where anybody would have mentioned Dos Passos. And I had seen Dos Passos, possibly even this book, at the public library in the town that I grew up in. And it never occurred to me that I could read something like this. And I just finished reading War and Peace by Tolstoy, and I've decided that reading chonkers is a good vehicle for me to sort of just build up my reading muscles. And so that sort of what was the tipped the balance in favor of picking this up, since I knew it would be there, a lovely edition. Not that I intend to read this anytime soon, but the idea of plowing through bigger novels, I think is a good one for me, as I say, for practice's sake. So the next books that I was thinking about that he had were also Library of America editions, and I have begun to wonder about carrying over this chonkers idea into reading nonfiction chonkers. Currently, I am reading Henry Adams's History of the United States, a 2-volume Library of America set. But that I read only 20 minutes per day. I am enjoying it quite a bit, but I thought, well, what if I just take some big, massive book like that and make that, instead of a novel, make that my primary focus for a bit. So that's just an idea that I've been playing with. Well, another book that has played in my mind, actually since the time that I was a young man working up in Evanston, was the histories of Francis Parkman. Now, those were books that I remember seeing at the Evanston Public Library. In those days, up until the very end, I was not allowed to check anything out from the Evanston Public Library. But then at some point after that, I learned that with a Chicago library card, you could have access to their books or something like that. Somehow the circumstance changed and I was able to. But I remember seeing his Library of America editions there as I was just scanning the shelves. And oddly enough, as with Dos Passos, because I was not much of a reader, and I had remembered seeing Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago in similar circumstances, these books that I would see, it never crossed my mind that it was the sort of thing that I could read. And that misapprehension persisted with me just until, well, really until 2 years ago, or well, until now that I have got 2 years of solid reading under my belt. I gradually increased my reading bit by bit. So 6 years ago, I read some of the Russian classics, a handful, maybe 6, maybe 8, culminating in the Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, after which I couldn't do anymore. I tried reading Tolstoy's War and Peace and just could not do it. I set it aside at 50 or 100 pages, and that was that, up until this January when I started reading it. I think the reason that it just never occurred to me that such material was or would be accessible to me was because I was indeed such a poor reader. And in line with that, also, there was the idea that I could never improve in that regard. And that is false. As with many other things, if you just work at something, you can improve. So I have been working and improving. Now, my little bookshop in Evanston had the 2-volume set of Parkman's history in boxes. And the last time that I had been there, I looked at it. Well, one of them had some folds in some of the front pages, which bothered me. It was obviously the fault of a customer. I don't think that he would have left the book in that condition. And so that played on my mind, and I thought, well, still, for the price, and I think it probably was $20 for the 2-volume set. I thought, well, for the price, how can I pass it by? Well, I had my next appointment in Evanston, but lo and behold, unthinkingly, I had made my appointment for 9 o'clock or something like that in the morning, and his shop does not open until 11, so I was not able to get the book. But the thought, of course, once injected into my brain, continued to play there, and finally I decided to just go ahead, and I scoured around and found that the best deal that I could get for the 2 volumes was at eBay. So this is the 2-volume set. They are indeed chonkers. And I picked them up, and I didn't think, and I don't think, that I would be reading them immediately. When I finish the 2 volumes of Henry Adams, if still living, and if still so inclined, then I will slot these in that 20-minute per day slot, which is generally reserved for the subject of American politics or history, and I read them while stretching. But this other idea now is playing in my head, and I thought, well, perhaps I could do this instead of a big chonker novel. Now, chonker is, of course, a BookTube term for a big mammoth book. Mammoth is another BookTube term. In fact, chonker isn't really, but I like saying it. So the problem with this is that at eBay, the vendor who had these for sale had a deal or I can't remember, an incentive that if you bought 4 books, one of them would be free, or if you bought 3, then you would get a 4th one for free. And so I thought, well, that's kind of a no-brainer, and so I looked for other Library of America volumes, and when you do that sort of purchasing, you want the prices to be all sort of similar. One of these, I don't remember which, was a couple of dollars higher than the other, but so I wanted my purchases to be in that range, and they did have that seller did have a couple of books that fit the bill of being the right price and not something I'm overly excited to read anytime soon, but whenever I have looked at the Library of America catalog, I've always thought that I would like to read this. Thompson, this is Virgil Thompson, has or is represented by 2 volumes of books at the Library of America. The other one, unfortunately, did not come with a dust jacket. And I think of the 2, I would be more inclined to read this. I have not read anything about music since I was pretty young, and since I am becoming a more solid reader, I find that I am expanding what I am able to read, and I do hope one day perhaps to get this. But for me, the simple notion of getting these 4 books at a total cost of, I think, $21.50 or something like that, including the shipping, was a no-brainer. These I have designs upon. As I say, I remember seeing these books at the Evanston Public Library. And I find as I build up my tolerance for reading, that every time I nail something that I had seen or that I had thought about when much younger, I feel a sense of satisfaction. So War and Peace, which I just finished, the first time I had attempted it, I failed, and this time I was able to make it all the way through in slightly over 1 month. And I felt a sense of satisfaction. And so this, if I live so long as I say, this I will tentatively schedule or slot and take a stab at one of these days. Now, the balance there that I have to worry about is the Library of America books, as one might expect, tend to focus very heavily on the United States of America. And in my reading, that is not where I want my focus to be necessarily. I am reading Henry Adams's History of the United States, which is specifically focusing on the administration of Thomas Jefferson in one volume and then James Madison in the next. And neither of these are subjects that I have any great curiosity about. But having begun them, I find the books very interesting. And it is additionally useful to know about the origins of my own country. And so I think Parkman particularly would be a good investment for me. I believe I have a penguin of his book, The Oregon Trail, which also might be worth doing. But as I say, I'm peculiarly attracted to these big, chunky tomes. So it's something that I will continue to think about. But over the years, I don't think that people who are all that younger than I or who have grown up in the internet age can quite comprehend how difficult it used to be to get information about things or to learn anything. As I said, furtherly hamstrung as I was by not being able to read a poorly written book, just being able to access the book that you wanted by chance finds at the used bookstore that you happen to have access to really did not help a reader who is desiring to focus on certain specific topics. For that kind of book buying, you were best just glancing at what was there and just taking a chance on whatever it was you happened to pick up. And that is very valuable. But one area, having spent time in what was called and is called, I believe still, the Republic of China, actually the island of Taiwan, and then subsequent to that, having spent a lot of my adult life affiliated with or associating with Chinese people, I have always felt severely the lack of history in that area. Of course, you pick up little bits here and there simply by osmosis. But for me, that's not enough. And for many years, it was my goal. And then as you started to be able to buy books online, to find some good sources for that. And I tried, I think, more than one single volume histories of China. I mean, it's a vast just geography, but also time-wise, it's just a vast expanse of material that needs to be covered. Of course, when I was young, I did read a Penguin history of Africa. So, I mean, how can you do a one slim volume history of Africa. But it was a good introduction. And so that is what I had hoped for with these one volumes on China, that I bought a couple of them and did not wind up liking any of them, sadly. One was had a very good reputation, which was a translation from a book originally written in French. And I came upon the Harvard series of Empire. And I will just show you those. I've had this whole collection of books sitting on my shelf for a long while. I'll show you. Now, I was on a Voxer chat with John David, who is a booktuber whose channel is highly recommended for its reviews of books that tend to have some intellectual substance to them. I highly recommend it. In fact, I will put a link in the description, possibly to his latest video. But in one of his videos, I learned of an author on contemporary Chinese affairs, if by contemporary you can accept the age of Mao. I suppose it is not such anymore. But, and I was very interested in this trilogy of books that he talked about, but I knew that I have not even hit this set of books on empire that Harvard put out. And so I wanted to show him the books. And he said, well, you should make a video about that. I said, well, I can't because I haven't read them. So here is the set. I can't even hold them up. You see that? Now, I'm cheating here a little bit because the book on the Shang is not part of the set. It just happens to fit that size. And this author was, in my earliest days of trying to read, he was one of my three historians. The first was Moses Finley, the second was Bernard Lewis, and he was the third. Although actually he is not a historian, he was, I should say, an archaeologist. And this is the only of the books I just held up that I have read. It's the kind of book that modern excavations have probably outdated at this point. And so anybody looking for an introduction to the topic would do best getting something new. And of course, there are other civilizations, even regionally, that were not known about at the time that this was written. So it's incomplete, but I did read it, and it is the type of book that I might even consider reading again. So to show you my my set of Chinese books here, the early Chinese empires, and this is by Mark Edward Lewis. And what prompted me toward the Harvard set is that I think 3 of the books are written by Lewis, 3 out of 6. And I have read by Lewis Sanctioned Violence in Ancient China, which is a very good book about the topic. And so because I know that I like his writing, I thought, well, 3 out of 6, it's probably a good bet that I will like the series. And so I set about collecting them. So the first one was the earliest. Sorry for the glare. Lovely covers. I think I was picking these up before paperbacks had been issued, and you can find them in paperbacks now. So the second, and I should say about this first one, I did read it probably 2/3 of the way, and then just set it aside and never got back to it. So it is my goal as with Tolstoy, which I had set aside 6 years before, to reread that and then read the whole series all together. And that may be something that I will do. So the second one is China's cosmopolitan empire, the Tang Dynasty. So I know almost nothing about this, but I suspect that the 6 separate volumes conjoined together will give me a good overview. China between empires, the northern and southern dynasties. So that's where Lewis leaves off. And then we have the Age of Confucian rule. And who is this by? Kuhn. Dieter Kuhn. So I don't know anything about this, but just look at these copies, how beautiful they are. Just lovely. I mean, just lovely, clean copies. So that would be the fourth. And then I think the last two, oh no, I take that back. So this one is by Timothy Brooke, The Troubled Empire. So who is that? The China in the Yuan and the Ming dynasties. So I don't know if you can see that pretty well. I like the coin motif that the books all have on their spine. Now, Timothy Brooke is the editor of the whole series, I believe. So, and then the last one by William T. Rowe, China's Last Empire. So that would bring me pretty close to modern times, and ideally, I would like to have that under my belt before I start reading about Mao. But on the other hand, having read last year Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago and then a novel relating to the period, I would dearly like to know about what was going on in China at the time. So these are possibilities, and just as I'm talking to you about this, I'm thinking that these deserve to be slotted in place before Parkman. So I think possibly for my next big project, I will attempt this and just leave Parkman off in the wings. And then I thought I would just show you 2 other books, which at the time seemed really important for me to get. And I sweated to get these books, to find them, just to find copies and then to find them at a decent price. And they are probably hopelessly outdated at this point, and I know nothing about them. I think they're both printed by Yale. But they're beautiful books. I think my favorite archaeologist, he translated this. I see it there. So that's why I picked this up, and then it's kind of in tandem with this. So, and anything that he was affiliated with, I automatically give points of credibility to. So this is both of these are more in line with his area of early study. So I'm not really sure about these, whether they're the kind of books that I want to tackle, seeing that they will be outdated at this point. But I suspect they are good treatments based on the available knowledge at the time. And what do I, who am just 1 foot shy of the grave, what do I need with the absolute latest information? And I did try to buy something by somebody that I thought looked very good, and I opened the book up, a recent book, and I found it unreadable. This was a couple of years ago. Possibly I will be able to plow my way through it. But I lost my train of thought there. This might be better, but these are books I'm not committed to but the set of 6 on the history of empire, as they're framing the series, definitely is. And so I think that's where I'm going to be at next. And so it just occurred to me, this thought of accumulating these books back in the day when it was harder to get things. Of course, now it can be hard because of the price. That anything new covering this subject, just buying it new, is going to cost you $50-something. And it's hard to make that kind of a commitment for a book that you haven't read and you don't know that you're going to be able to get into. So Mark Edward Lewis, as far as this, I know I like, and he has several other books beside the sanctioned violence, which I read. He has several other books that look supremely interesting, and they are selling for like $50 a piece. And if I make it through this set and read all of these 3 books by Lewis, then at that point I can make a determined judgment whether it is worth my while or not to plunk down the money on those other books by him. But I'm committed to reading those 3 first. I suppose that's my mini version or micro version of the read what you own challenge. The thing is, it's been my practice when you would be scouring the clearance shelves, if you saw something that looked right, it was wise to just pick it up, talking $2 or $3 at the most as time went on. It used to be $1 even. And so when first books started becoming available online, I was really pleased to be able to get things like this. And so I do have here and there books in the wings, as I say, waiting for me to read them, that I feel deserve priority. And in the case of this, as I say, when it's a book that I've attempted and failed to make it through, there is an added satisfaction at this point with the stronger reading abilities to actually crack that nut and get to the meat of it, as one of my favorite booktubers likes to talk about, the meat of this video. So I will just leave that there, and thank you for spending the time that you've devoted to watching this video. Have a good day.